Hello and welcome Multifamily Pros. For our new listeners, I'm your host Yolanda, and to returning listeners, welcome back. Did you know that NAA's 2023 Property Management Benchmark Report indicated that nearly half of property management firms identified delinquencies and financial management as the biggest risks impacting their operations? Today, I'm sitting down with Dean Julius, Portfolio Manager at Vesica Real Estate in Jackson, Mississippi, and we're diving into the 5 critical financial tools that every manager in multifamily should know. Dean, welcome to the show.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome to have you here. So in property management, financial literacy isn't just a skill. It can often be a deciding factor between success and failure in maintaining profitability. Yet, it's a skill that sets many folks apart, and many underestimate it until it's too late. Dean, you've entered the industry relatively recently, so I'm curious, was there a specific moment early on where you realized that mastering these financial tools wasn't just important, but crucial to your success?
Yeah, well, first of all, like I said, thanks for having me. I'm grateful to Zico and you, Yolanda and Amber, for having me on the podcast. I would say 2 things. One, my career is in teaching. I was a teacher for a decade before I came into property management. Also, like as a kid, I was just fascinated with saving money early on. I had a coin jar that was shaped like a parking meter, and I just really was fascinated with this notion that, if I tucked away a little bit for a long period of time, at the end that would pay off and I could get something big rather than like spending my money in the short term on something small. Mm-hmm. Later on I got a part-time job, and my dad sort of forced me into doing that, and I'm grateful for it. But opened up a savings account. So I've always had this desire to save and manage my money. Like I said, I was a teacher, and so, like a lot of people, I think, who are fascinated with real estate and property management, I was interested in and I understood the financial freedom that owning real estate can afford, especially if you're trying to do this as a side hustle that could eventually become like a main source of or a primary source of income. And so that's really the thing that spurred my interest. And I'm fortunate that, I work at a small company where my boss is not just a boss, she's a mentor and someone I've been able to partner with. And so I think, early on it was just that desire, really. I mean, like a lot of people, I wanted to get into real estate as a side hustle, and reached out to our owner, our CEO, who I incidentally taught her son 7th grade English. And so just kind of reached out for some mentorship, and that turned into a full-time job.
That's awesome. How fortuitous that happened. And so since then, have there been any market or industry events that you can point to that have influenced your approach to financial management?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I joined our company at a pretty chaotic time. We were coming out of the depths of COVID, and in our state, a lot of rental assistance programs were ending or drying up, and that was a lot sooner than other states and markets. And so not only that, our owner was going through a pretty major health crisis, and we had some staffing issues, a lot of staffing issues, frankly, that made daily operations pretty challenging. And so I can remember some candid conversations that we had early on where she said to me, look, this job is simple. You got to collect rent, and you got to rent apartments, and everything else is extra. Mm-hmm. And I think that those 2 goals really work in service of good financial management. Like, if you're not bringing money in, then you're not making money, and that's collecting rent. And if you're not renting the units that you have in inventory, then you're losing money to vacancy loss. And so, that's really the bread and butter of property management. You got to sell apartments, and you got to collect rent.
It's simple as that. So getting into the meat of it a little bit, spoiler alert for our listeners, we did some pre-recording communication and shook out 5 of the most important financial concepts in property management. Now, these aren't necessarily in order of importance, but they are cash flow analysis, budgeting, CapEx, planning, delinquency management, and P&L, meaning profit and loss, and reporting. So to kick this off, Dean, cash flow, which some folks refer to as the heartbeat of a property's financial health. Why is cash flow a top 5 skill for you? And could you share a time when understanding and analyzing cash flow made a significant impact on a property's profitability?
Yeah, so everything that we own and manage is in the same neighborhood. We're all of our properties are located in Jackson, Mississippi, in a couple of different neighborhoods. Basically within 4 or 5 square miles. But we're a tertiary market, as they say. So, and we're also a market where property values have appreciated like roughly 3% since 2013. So, if you're chasing appreciation, Jackson is a pretty tough sell. But there's a lot of opportunity here for value add and for buying distressed property. And if you're able to keep expenses low and the math works out, then you can find properties that cash flow or properties that you can flip. And I think that it's important to understand cash flow, and I think it's one of as you mentioned, one of the top 5 skills, because it gets to the basic fundamentals of business, right? If your money in, your income is less than the money that you're spending, then if your money in is less than your expenses, you're net negative. And without some kind of cash infusion, then you're not going to be able to sustain this operation for the long haul. And you also want to be able to grow your business, and so you've got to be able to find a way to keep cash on hand so that you can do that. And especially in this business, like things break all the time. And as soon as my wife and I are a great example. Is we bought our first house and the hot water heater broke and the air conditioner went out. So and that was within the first month of ownership. So
Wow.
That's not ideal. And sometimes these things happen, but in property management that happens at scale, and so you've got to be intentional about doing your due diligence ahead of time and making sure that after your management expenses and everything else, that there's something extra, especially in a market like ours, because as I mentioned, we don't really anticipate, given historical data, appreciation, right? In a place like California or other states like Texas, Austin, some of these other bigger markets, if for example, that there's a really great local school and there's a huge amount of development and growth happening, and you found a great deal, then you can kind of bank on the fact that 5 to 10 years down the road you can pocket some equity from the purchase of whatever property you're in. And maybe you can stomach the loss on cash flow on the front end because you paid a little bit more for the deal or whatever. But we just don't have that liberty. We're more interested in what folks would call like value add investing and trying to find something that's a great property at a reasonable price, so that we can make enough after expenses to support our property management business and hopefully offer owners and investors a return.
That makes a lot of sense. And digging a little deeper into just something you just said here, I'm curious, what key indicators do you monitor to ensure healthy cash flow? And have you run into any scenarios where monitoring those indicators has actually allowed you to proactively address any issues?
So, vacancy occupancy is such an important component of that. When you're only typically as a management company pocketing 10% of your income, as your management company expense, then if your vacancy balloons or if your delinquency balloons, then no one's really making money. So I think that's one thing that we're always keeping an eye on, and this is a great time of year to be talking about that, right? It's the summer, it's leasing season.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in Mississippi, I always ask myself this, like, why does everyone want to move when it's 100 degrees outside? You would think that in the winter time people would be more attuned to making a change, but I don't know.
Good question. I want to know too. Well, so the next big concept that I'd love to cover with you is big in a number of jobs, mine included, and that's budgeting. I consider budgeting both an art and a science because it's not just about what you have planned. You also need to consider potential changes throughout the year, kind of like what you alluded to a little bit earlier on. And I've heard that budgeting and property management is often compared to walking a tightrope, balancing immediate needs with those longer term goals. So, how do you maintain flexibility in your budgets, especially when those unexpected costs arise?
Sure. Well, I think the important thing to talk about here is maintenance for a little bit, because really what we say primarily when we talk about expenses in this biz are maintenance. And we do that in-house. I know a lot of folks vendor it all out. They have a third party that's helping them with their maintenance, but we have an in-house maintenance staff. And so, like I said, that doesn't work for everyone. And frankly, it's incredibly challenging, especially given the amount of employee turnover that exists in this particular industry. I think that's true both on the management and the maintenance side, frankly, but more so, at least, I've experienced it on the maintenance side. But because we do it in-house, it helps us, I think, better understand our budget for unit turns, and we have a more intimate knowledge of the cost involved in, everything from, changing something as simple as light fixtures and plugs and switches to, doing a toilet, to doing a tub, shower surrounds, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we're able to plan for, how much it's going to cost to do a unit turn. And we have a system and a process for that. Like, is it a level 1? Is it a level 2? Is it a level 3? But like I said, we've struggled pretty mightily with turnover among technicians, and I don't think we're alone in that. It's just like the nature of the beast. But anyway, that's created a burden at times of needing to vendor out unit turns, and that puts us at the mercy of a contractor. And if you've been in this game for any length of time, you know that contractor prices fluctuate pretty wildly. What they quote you one month for a few grand could be double that, triple that a few months down the road, just sort of depending on the market really. So anyway. In 2022 and 2023 especially, we had to do a lot of that. We had to vendor out a lot of our unit turns, just given staff turnover. And if you're a mom and pop like us, or even smaller, if you're just a retail and you have a rental property on your own on the side, that can be the difference between whether or not your property cash flows for the year or doesn't. And so, finding ways to keep those expenses low is really so integral to whether or not, you're functioning and able to sustain your business.
Yeah, clearly such an important skill to be able to master in this industry. The next one, CapEx, correlates a little bit with budgeting. For the acronym challenge, like myself, CapEx stands for capital expenditures, and it refers to the funds that investors or managers use to make large repairs or replace essential parts of a property, right? CapEx considerations can be crucial for maintaining property value over time. So, Dean, I know that Vesica's properties are in a historically significant neighborhood, in Jackson. So I'm sure this is a topic you're familiar with. Can you walk us through a particular project where CapEx planning led to some surprising results?
Yeah. So two things. During COVID, we invested some money in a system called Butterfly MX. It's an access control system, a gate system, at two of our largest properties. And we weren't entirely sure how that would turn out. We had clickers and kind of did it the old school way. But our residents and neighbors loved the change. They can download an app on their phone, and it lets them get in and out of the gate. They can create a virtual pass for guests when guests come, and that expires after a set time. And so that was really a welcome change. And frankly, access control gates are not cheap. So we really had to plan for that expense. But then another cool thing that we did was we installed solar panels on one of our 12-unit properties. And we worked with a company called Alum Energy and Energy Mississippi, our major utility provider here. And we were able to, by installing this solar array on top of the building, we were able to cut resident utility bills by somewhere between 15 and 20% monthly, which, on a $100 utility bill, that's $20. So it really adds up. And, we're one of the first places in Mississippi to do a project like that. So I think, being small and being agile and, knowing where to put those dollars when you have them really has paid off.
Awesome. And you also, sounds like you also got some maybe unexpected, really positive satisfaction results from residents as well.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard from tenants who've provided feedback on the solar array, it's been really helpful. Really helpful.
Awesome. And now our fourth critical financial tool is a little bit of a sensitive topic, delinquency management. This financial skill is more than just number crunching. It involves difficult conversations and making tough decisions. So Dean, how do you balance the empathy with the need to maintain financial stability when dealing with delinquencies?
Sure. Well, I would start by saying that our ethos and our mission of the company has always been centered around keeping our neighborhood affordable and welcoming to everybody. And in this business, it's often about, especially at scale, profit. And so, that's not always, and I don't think that that's entirely where our heart lies. We love this neighborhood, and we love our management team, and everyone here lives in the same neighborhood where we rent. And so we just have like a deep commitment and passion to this neighborhood and the people that we rent to. And so I think it's important for property management companies and property managers to understand that, everybody falls on hard times. That's the reality. But, keeping consistent with whatever your company's policies are and working with tenants on good communication before they get into a pickle is critical. And so we offer payment plans for folks who have a good relationship with us. We utilize some software solutions that integrate with our customer relationship manager to allow tenants to split payments. And I think Vigo even recently started offering some of that as well. So, yeah, things like that. Anything we can do on the front end, really, to
be proactive,
communicate with the tenant before they get into that pickle, and just encourage tenants, right? And let them know, hey, we're here. If you're having a hard time, reach out to us before you get into this bind. I think that helps a lot with keeping delinquency low.
Yeah, and that certainly sounds like sage advice. So last but certainly not least, our top 5 financial tools that every property manager must know is P&L reporting. P&L reporting is more than just numbers on a page. It can tell a story of a property's financial health. So, Dean, how do you use P&L reports to help inform your decisions? And what are some of the most critical metrics that you zero in on with them?
Sure. Well, let me touch back on what we were just talking about for a second, because it relates to profit and loss. You know, delinquency eventually is going to become a secondary issue, right? Like ultimately, you have to bring up the eviction word, you know, court is not fun for anybody. We want to avoid it. Tenants want to avoid it. It's not pleasant for anybody. And it's also expensive for everybody, you know, even management companies. And so, you know, to connect that with P&L reporting, I can give, you know, sort of like a yearly example and then also a seasonal example. But, you know, we're constantly looking at our monthly profit and loss statement and then as well as our yearly profit and loss statement to see, you know, where are our dollars going. You know, post-COVID, like I said, a lot of rental assistance programs dried up. And so, you know, we were seeing a rise in delinquency. You know, we realized on our P&L report we were spending an enormous amount of money month over month, and ultimately we spent a lot of money in those, you know, years immediately following COVID on court. And so we knew we needed to come up with a new strategy, right? Like the strategy of, okay, you're delinquent, we're going to go to court, we're going to try to get the money following the, you know, typical court system wasn't the most effective way, and it was expensive. It was too expensive, really. And so the alternative is, like I said, communicating on the front end, having a conversation with our neighbors and saying, look, is there something that we can do early on, you know, before you get 2-3 months down the road of being behind on rent to help you? Can we incentivize, you know, a move in some other way? So that's one thing. And we only, you know, came to that realization by looking at the profit and loss statement and saying, okay, look, we spent X amount of money on court across the 400 units in our portfolio, and that is, you know, when you compare that to years prior to COVID, it's pretty exponential. Another good example on the yearly scale is like our cost of insurance, and I know this is true in California, just from the folks that I follow on social media. I mean, insurance costs have gone through the roof for everybody, and you know, you don't exactly plan for that. Like no one's anticipating a 100% increase in the cost of insurance, but it has happened, and you know, we've seen a huge rise in our insurance costs, and so just looking at your P&L is really helpful in that regard. And then seasonally, you know, it's hot as heck down here. I think today the heat index is over 100 in Jackson. So with regards to vacancy, I mean, we can see on our report, you know, we're spending approximately you know, $5,000 a month on keeping ghosts cold. And so, you know, I mean, it's little stuff like that adds up. And, you know, it's as simple as having a conversation with our maintenance staff, like, hey, you know, we gotta cut the air conditioner off. We gotta make sure the lights are off. And, you know, I feel like we have a Monday meeting with our maintenance staff, and I feel like, you know, an angsty dad waving in the newspaper, like, cut the lights off. But I mean, it really does. It adds up.
Yeah, it does sound like this is such an important tool to be using regularly and to be able to proactively manage the properties. So Dean, interesting question for you. I started out by saying we're discussing these 5 financial tools in no specific order, but I'm curious if you had to rank them in order of importance for decision making, what would that rank order be?
So we didn't really mention this one. I kind of came up with my own list, or I riffed off your list a little bit. But you know, I think the most important thing is to remember that payroll is your biggest expense. I think this is true of any company. Payroll is your biggest expense. And so I think the most important financial tool, and this probably relates to your P&L, but, the most important thing is to build a good team. You're only as strong as your weakest link on your team. And if you don't have good teammates, A, your job's not enjoyable, and, B, it's hard to run your business. And so I think that that's probably the most important thing to your success financially, is knowing that you've got good teammates. But then, I would say your P&L, your money in, your money out, recognizing that and understanding that is second most important. And then, understanding what your goal is in terms of cash flow and appreciation. Two things. I don't think that every property manager is thinking about this stuff. I think that some of these questions are probably more in line with what the CEO of the property management company is thinking and the owner is thinking. But, as a property manager, you can help inform some of those decisions. And so, understanding, are we after appreciation? Are we in this market, or are we looking at this property because we think that 5 years down the road, like this asset's going to be worth, 30-40% more than what it is today? If that's the case, then maybe you're not exactly concerned with the fact that you might not be cash flowing right now, versus, a company like ours that's more interested in, value add and, cash flowing in the short term. And then, I would say you got to have a good budget. If you don't have a budget, then, I don't know. I mean, I think
you got problems.
Personally, I think both personally and professionally, this is just incredibly important to your success financially. Everybody needs a budget, and I can't recommend that enough. And then, lastly, I would say I'm constantly looking at comparables, and having a good understanding of your peers in the market, and where things are going, what rents are looking like down the street, and in other neighborhoods is important as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing your personal view on that rank order, Dean. And I know that getting familiar with and, of course, applying these financial skills can be a daunting task for some. Are there any specific resources that you might recommend for those who want to develop this skill set, both for general knowledge and also for application? And what, if any, resources do you personally use today now that you have more industry experience under your belt?
Yeah. So, like I said, everyone needs a budget. You need a budget. So my wife and I personally use, I don't know how many of y'all follow Money with Katie, but I think that she is great. She is Katie Gaddy Tassin. I could be mispronouncing her name, but anyway, she's excellent. She's got YouTube videos, and she has a blog. Anyway, she has a really great budget spreadsheet. We kind of like to do things more hands-on, so we've used that budget spreadsheet in our personal lives. But, on the professional side, you need to be applying the same fundamental principles. You need to know how much things generally cost, and if those are moving in a direction of being more expensive, so that you can plan for that. So I think that's one thing. If you want something more hands-on personally, that's what I would recommend. If you're into automation, You Need a Budget is a really good one. YNAB. Let's see, what else? I recently finished reading Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and I'm blanking on the name of the author, but it's not exactly about financial tools, but it is. The thesis really, if I could sum it down to a sentence, is you need to understand the why of your business and the goals of your business, and in order to succeed. And ultimately, that's, if you don't know your why, if you don't know your company's values, then it's really it's hard to be profitable, but it's also about developing systems and processes, like Rockefeller did for, quarterly meetings and, weekly meetings, daily check-ins. All that kind of stuff is just helpful to, your day-to-day, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter success of the business. And then, I would say, there's quite a few people that I follow on social media, like Twitter or X. Moses Kagan is a really great one who, has a similar business model to ours. They, run a property management, like a local property management company. His blog is kagansblog.com, and he's Moses Kagan on Twitter. And then Chad Carson is another great example of just someone who started out kind of like me, investing on the side and interested in real estate, and grew that into a property management business. So those are a couple of folks that I follow. And then, like in terms of comps, I'm always on Zillow. My wife is always getting on me because I'm looking at Zillow or looking at apartments.com or, whatever, because I'm just interested in what our market looks like. And my sister-in-law is also in Arkansas, and so I'm trying to get her to move into town. And so it's part because I want to find her a great deal and get her to move to town, but also, it just helps. Like, I know what a 2-2 is going for around here. I know what a 3-2 is going for in our neighborhood, and that's helpful. I'm not actively a real estate agent, but I feel like having that knowledge is helpful, especially on the rent side. I know what a 1-1 is going for, and I know where our rents are relative to that.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's real estate apps and websites can be quite the time suck. They're fun to look at. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and we'll make sure for our listeners that all those resources that you named are listed on our podcast page so they can easily access them. And Dean, I think that's a great note for us to end on. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. We covered a lot of ground in this conversation, and I hope our listeners find it useful and interesting, just like I have. For most of us, financial speak does not come naturally, but it's a critical component of the job. So thank you so much for agreeing to join us on the podcast and for sharing your perspective.
Yeah, thank you all. Really appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Thanks again. And folks, hold on one moment for the good news.
It's the good news.
Hey, Multifamily Pros. I'm Amber, your behind-the-scenes podcast producer, stepping into the spotlight to share some listener good news with you. Now, what's good news? Well, really, it can be anything. We're talking a successful work initiative, a fantastic resident review. I want to hear shout-outs to your work colleagues, even a friend, personal updates. Heck, even promote yourself. I love self-promotions. Who else is going to do it but yourself? So this is your time to shine. There's enough stress and anxiety in multifamily and the world, so help us shine a brighter light on what's going right. How do you submit good news? Luckily, it's simple. Go to the show bio on any platform you're listening or on our podcast page, gozego.com/podcast, and click the Contact the Show link. You can leave a text or a voice message of your good news, and we'll highlight it on the following show. All right. You know how to do it. I want to see those getting submitted, so let's get into the good stuff that was already submitted. First up, Allie I said, I finally leased an apartment that has been on the market for 70 plus days. Woohoo! Go, Allie. That has got to be such a great feeling. Next up is Anonymous. The best thing to happen to me this year is that I obtained my real estate broker's license. This will help me to be able to bring on new clients and expand my business/portfolio while also helping to increase my revenue stream. I'll also be doing some continuing ed each year to stay on top of the industry's hottest trends, which will help to keep me, quote, in the know. Anonymous, congratulations. It's always about building on your skills. Getting your real estate broker's license, no easy feat. So congratulations on that. I can't wait to see you grow. Next up from another anonymous is a personal win. I have successfully lost 40 pounds and I'm making great lifestyle changes to improve my health. Oh my gosh, anonymous, I wish I had your name here. Congratulations. Losing 40 pounds is no easy feat. It's all about the lifestyle changes. So congrats on your continued healthy lifestyle. All right. Next up, another anonymous. So the unusual market, the anonymous says, the unusual market we've experienced this summer seems to be stabilizing and we're back up to 98% occupancy. Woo! Congrats. According to apartments.com, the leads we weren't seeing at the start of the season are finally trickling in. We've signed more than 10 leases in 3 weeks, so this seems to be accurate. Oh, anonymous, kudos to you. I know, like, when numbers take a dip, it can be heart attack inducing, but you definitely seem like you're on the right track. Congrats on the 98% occupancy. I'm sure you're going to be at 100, even by the time I've said this. So congrats. And our final good news for the day is from Jacqueline A. Jacqueline says, my tenants are happy with all the improvements that were made since I took over 2 years ago. Oh my gosh, Jacqueline, congratulations. That says a lot about you as a property manager. It's so wonderful to hear that your residents are happy. You've made those needed improvements. I bet your resident satisfaction scores are through the roof. Write back in and share them. But either way, Jacqueline, congrats on that. All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you to everyone who wrote in for the good news this week. I can't wait to hear what our listeners have to say next week. Till then.
Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now to the Resident Experience podcast on your favorite platforms like Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can always access episodes, including guest details and transcripts on Zigo's website, gozigo.com. To connect with us directly, make sure you follow @go_Zigo on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, open the door to giving residents more.